WHGE 95.3 coming up, the Open Eye.
Those of us that indulge in or commit intellectual violence don't do so for the pleasure of mental masturbation or ego digging. We do so because the chains of oppression on people's minds are deep and difficult to remove.
Good morning, my children of the sun. Welcome to the Open Eye on WHGE 95.3 FM. I'm your host, Third Eye Optometrist Patrice Gibbs, here to get your third eye open. Yes, indeed. Right, and as we always start off, every generation has its purpose. Ours is to reveal the truth and reverse the brainwashing, and we do that right here on Open Eye. All right. See, this is the space where comfort is not the goal. Clarity is. Where power is questioned. History is remembered, and truth is spoken plainly, even when it makes folks uncomfortable, especially when it makes people uncomfortable. Because let's be clear, we're living in a moment where lies travel faster than facts, where propaganda wears a suit and calls itself patriotism, and where cruelty is sold as policy. A moment where genocide is debated like a talking point, corruption is normalized, and ignorance is celebrated as authenticity. And yet, here we are, still asking real questions, still connecting the dots, still refusing to be gaslit into silence. The Open Eye exists because democracy without truth is theater. Because justice without memory is fraud. Because the people who don't know their history can be managed, manipulated, and moved against their own interests. On the Open Eye, we center the people pushed to the margins. We call out empire, hypocrisy, and double standards. Whether they come wrapped in a flag, a cross, or a campaign slogan. We talk politics, culture, economics, and history. Not as separate conversations, but as one connected system. This is not infotainment. This is not something that both sides nonsense. This is context. So wherever you're listening from, your car, your kitchen, your job, or your struggle, lock in with us for the next hour. Open your mind, sharpen your perspective. Remember, seeing clearly is the first act of resistance. This is the Open Eye. Hold on, let me get my disclaimer out the way here. All right.
The views and opinions expressed on the Open Eye are those of the hosts, guests, and contributors, and do not reflect the policy or position of WHGE 95.3 FM, nor our sponsor, the Delaware Center for Homeless Vets. Any content provided by Open Eye's hosts, guests, or contributors are theirs and are not intended to malign any religion, ethnic group, company, or individual.
WHGE 95.3 FM. Yes, indeed. Let's get them going. Let's get them going. All right. I'm telling you something. Is that it? Yeah. Okay. The ancestors are looking at us. I'm proud of those. I'm proud of those of you who are committed to teaching truth. And I'm proud of those who are open, truly open enough to hear it. We see. In our day, truth was easy to hide. Information was locked away in temples, vaults, universities, churches, in the hands of gatekeepers. Yeah. The ancestors said history was rewritten with ink and enforced with violence. Names were erased. Memory was blurred. Stories were stolen. But you are living in the age of information. The lies are thinner. The archives are cracked open. The receipts are everywhere. There is no excuse for ignorance anymore, only a choice. And hear this clearly. We have the plan. I know we do because the ancestors gave it to me and told me to write it down so the children would know. Every night I petition the ancestors for guidance. And every morning the ancestors charge me to sound the alarm. This is not mysticism, comfort. This is responsibility. Search for self. Search for where you come from. Search for how the world really works. Search past comfort. Search past fear. Search past what you were told to believe just to survive. Because when we finally stand before those who carried us through chains, ships, fire, and silence, I do not want to be greeted with, how could you? How could you not ask? How could you not learn when the answers were within reach? How could you not teach when the children were watching? You are not walking alone. Every step toward truth, we walk with you. Every lie you learn breaks a chain we once had to wear. Every truth you pass on ensures the children won't have to start from scratch. We love you. We are proud of you. The alarm has been sounded. This is the Open Eye. WHGE 95.3 FM. The Open Eye optometrist, Patrice Gibbs here. All right. Okay. Adjust the sound a little bit here. You ever wonder how deeply entrenched the racism and hate was or is? It's so deep, even a cartoon became a battlefield. When Franklin stepped into Charlie Brown's world in 1968, it looked simple on the surface. A quiet black boy at the beach, handing Charlie Brown his drop book. But underneath that gentle moment was a political earthquake. Franklin wasn't just the first character in Peanuts. He was the first black child many white Americans had ever seen portrayed as simply equal. No trauma storyline, no moral of the week, no stereotypes, just a black kid being a kid. And that was enough to set off a national panic. Excuse me. Because in 1968, America was still reeling from the assassination of Dr. King. Still resisting school integration, still fighting over whether black people even deserved to sit in the same classroom, neighborhoods, voting booths. And here comes Charles Schultz quietly saying, a black child belongs in the same world, the same friendship circle, the same frame. That alone felt revolutionary. To some, it felt threatening. A school teacher wrote Schultz urging him to include a black child, and Schultz didn't argue, didn't hesitate. He used his pen as a weapon against ignorance. And instantly, the hate mail came in. Editors warned him the country wasn't ready. A cartoon. But Schultz pushed forward because racism was so thick, so suffocating, that adding one black child to a comic strip was treated like an act of defiance. That's how deep the hate went. Even Franklin triggered them. When Franklin appeared in the animated series, TV networks were still terrified of showing a black kid interacting too comfortably with white kids. Southern stations threatened not to air it. Sponsors complained. Executives whispered about crossing a line. It's a cartoon. So in the 1973 Thanksgiving special, we see something that still sparks debate. Franklin sitting alone on one side of the table. Not because Schultz wanted it that way. Schultz fought hard to include Franklin at all, but because studios were still afraid of segregated America's backlash. Think about that. A child, drawn in ink, smiling politely, triggered segregationists nationwide. That's how fragile racism is. That's how deeply entrenched the hate was and still is. A cartoon black child sitting at a table with white kids was considered dangerous. Damn. And yet, Franklin still stood tall. What they meant as a compromise turned into a symbol. There sits Franklin, calm, dignified, steady, unbothered. The only one at that table with real manners, real grace, real grounding. The one black child at the table never met for him, sitting with dignity anyway. That's our story, isn't it? We have always had to sit at the table not built for us. We have always had to navigate rooms waiting for us to fail. We have always had to bring our dignity into spaces that denied us humanity. Franklin didn't need to raise his voice. His very presence spoke volumes. He became a lesson in quiet resistance, showing up where they don't want you and holding your head high anyway. The real story? Racism was so woven into America that a simple gesture, a black child being treated as human, shook the system. And that tells you everything. Representation doesn't have to shout to be revolutionary. Sometimes it's a seat at the table. Sometimes it's a hand extended in friendship. Sometimes it's a little black boy in a comic strip saying, I belong here, and refusing to move. This is the Open Eye. WHGE 95.3 FM. I'm Patrice Gibbs. I want to thank Brother Steve Wright for reminding us what happened with Dave Chappelle. It was an interesting story because Comedy Central made billions from his show and paid him zip. One Instagram video made them pay millions. In 2003, Dave Chappelle pitched the show to HBO. They looked at him across the table. What do we need you for? They passed. Comedy Central said yes. Chappelle's show exploded. Season 1, Season 2, one of the biggest hits on cable. Then they offered him $50 million for 2 more years. Dave walked away, mid-season, middle of production, and the world destroyed him for it. Oh, he's on drugs. He's mentally unstable. He threw away $50 million. Dave fled to South Africa, hid from the cameras, because here, when nobody understood, he signed a contract that gave Comedy Central everything. DVD sales, they kept it. Syndication, they kept it. Streaming rights, they kept it. People made me think I made a lot of money from from Chappelle's show, Dave said. When I left that show, I never got paid. They didn't have to pay me because I signed the contract. But is that right? Dave came back, started over, did stand-up, small clubs, then bigger venues, while Comedy Central aired Chappelle's show on repeat, making millions. Dave got his salary, nothing else. Every DVD sold, zip. Every rerun aired, nothing. Every license deal, zero. Netflix offered him real money, $60 million for comedy specials. Someone finally paying what he was worth. But Comedy Central still owned Chappelle's show. Then Dave found out Comedy Central licensed his show to Netflix and HBO Max without asking him, without telling him, without paying him. HBO is now streaming the exact show they rejected, making money off the guy they said they didn't need. 15 years later, still nothing. Dave made one phone call to Netflix. This makes me feel bad, he told them. Netflix pulled the show that night. Then Dave did something nobody in entertainment had ever attempted. He posted a video to Instagram, looked directly at the camera, and asked his fans to boycott his show. I'm begging you, if you ever like me, if you ever think there was anything worthwhile about me, I'm begging you, please don't watch that show. I'm not asking you to boycott any network. Boycott me. Boycott Chappelle's show. Do not watch it unless they pay me. He was betting everything on loyalty. If it didn't work, he'd look desperate, broken. But his fans listened. They stopped watching. Viewership collapsed. The show became toxic, worthless. You made that show worthless, Dave said, because without your eyes is nothing. 2 months of silence. Then Viacom CBS called. They wanted to talk. Dave got everything. The rights to Chappelle's show, his name back, his license back, and they paid him millions. After 15 years, they finally paid him. Dave posted one final video. Asked you to stop watching the show, and thank God Almighty for you. You did. When you stopped watching it, they called me. I got my name back. I got my license back. I got my show back. And they paid me millions of dollars. After all these years, I can finally say, Comedy Central, it's been a pleasure doing business with you. The exec who asked, what do we need you for? Found out exactly what they needed. Everything. The media that destroyed him for walking away from $50 million watched him make Viacom CBS bend the knee with nothing but loyalty and the power to walk away. Don't quit. Be back with more WHGE 95.3 FM. This is Patrice Gibbs on the Open Eye. You heard what I just said about Dave Chappelle. Loyalty. It was loyalty that helped him get his money back, get his name back. If loyalty can make a corporation kneel, why can't it make power's answer to righteousness? This is a part of the story people keep skipping over. If millions of ordinary people can make a multi-billion-dollar corporation bend the knee for one comedian who was already financially fine, then the lie we've been sold is fully exposed. Because what Dave Chappelle proved is not about comedy. It's about power, consent, and collective refusal. Comedy Central didn't just grow a conscience. Viacom didn't wake up righteous. No executive had a moral epiphany. They moved because money stopped moving. Eyes stopped watching. Attention stopped flowing. Consent was withdrawn. And the moment the people said no, the empire blinked. So ask the dangerous question. If we could do it for entertainment, why can't we do this for justice? If we could organize loyalty to protect a millionaire's intellectual property, why can't we organize loyalty to protect human life? If we can crash the value of a TV show, why can't we crash the value of mass incarceration, endless war, environmental destruction, poverty policy, police violence, corporate theft, political corruption? Why do politicians tremble when donors speak, but sleep soundly when the people scream? Because we've been trained to believe a lie, that we are powerless unless we are desperate. Dave wasn't desperate. That's the key. He didn't beg the corporation. He didn't sue first. He didn't posture. He asked the people to withhold consent. And that is the one thing every system of domination fears, or organized refusal to participate. Because they didn't fear outrage. They don't fear tweets. They don't fear speeches. They fear boycotts, strikes, walkaways, mass non-compliance. Loyalty that no longer points upward. That same media that called Dave crazy for walking away from 50 million calls movements unrealistic when they demand justice. Same playbook, different battlefield. Because when someone refuses an unfair deal, the system's first move is always to attack their sanity. History is full of that pattern. Told you about it last week. But Chappelle exposed the final truth. Power doesn't come from position. It comes from participation. And participation is voluntary. Every unjust system survives because we keep showing up. The question isn't whether power can be made to kneel. The question is, what are we willing to stop watching, stop buying, stop endorsing, stop obeying? Because if loyalty can make Comedy Central kneel, then righteousness backed by collective refusal can make any throne shake. This is the Open Eye. Hey, hey, Sherry. I see you there, sister. Hey, hey, boy. All right, all right. WHGE 95.3 FM. You're enjoying the Open Eye. I want to thank my good friend, homeboy, brother Dr. Payne, for telling me about this, because I missed this. Mass shootings almost hits home, Delaware. Let's stop pretending this is about almost tragedies. Let's stop calling this close calls. What happened in Delaware is not reassurance, it's evidence. In late November this year, police didn't stumble on a disturbed thought. They uncovered a plan. A former university student sitting in a parked truck with a loaded handgun, extended magazine, body armor, and a handwritten manual for violence. Diagrams of a police station, entry points, exit routes, a named officer. Urban warfare tactics. This wasn't fantasy, this was rehearsal. Then came the follow-up search. More guns, more ammo, a tactical vest, a rifle with a scope, and a handgun illegally converted into a machine gun. Because in America, the distance between a grievance and a massacre is measured in how fast someone can swipe a credit card. And when asked why, the answer was chillingly familiar. Martyrdom. Glory through slaughter. Immortality through blood. This is what a society looks like when it normalizes violence and then acts shocked when people internalize it. Let's be clear. This didn't happen in a vacuum. It happened in a country that has already endured hundreds of mass shootings in 2025 alone. Hundreds. Not arguments, not hypotheticals, not thoughts and prayers, bodies, trauma, sirens, graves. And still, America refuses to act. We regulate everything except the thing that keeps killing us. We track welfare recipients down to the penny. America criminalized protests, bans and burns books, police women's bodies, and that stepped up surveillance on communities. But when it comes to weapons engineered for mass death, lawmakers suddenly develop amnesia and impotence. Now isn't the time. It's complicated. We need more data. Meanwhile, the data is being buried every week. This country doesn't lack solutions, it lacks political will. Because political will will require confronting the gun industry, the lobbyists, the donors, and the culture of fear they monetize. It will require admitting that profit has been placed above human life over and over again. Every time an attack is stopped, officials rush to calm the public. No immediate threat. But that statement itself is an admission of failure. Because the truth is, there's an ongoing threat. Not from one individual, but from a system that keeps producing them. We're not safer. We're just temporarily lucky. And luck is not public policy. One day the notebook won't be found. One day the traffic stop won't happen. One day the park will be empty and the building full. When that day comes, remember this. The blood will not only belong to the person who pulled the trigger, it belongs to a nation that saw the pattern, counted the dead, and chose inertia anyway. America's crisis is not gun violence. America's crisis is moral cowardice. This is the Open Eye. WHGE 95.3 FM. The Open Eye. Yeah. Let me tell you about something. Let me tell you about pirates. Yeah. I used to like to watch some swashbuckling movies. What was it? Captain Blood with Earl Flynn. And what's there was one with Yul Brenner. Pirates, man. America likes pirates, don't it? Oh, wait a minute. So when Yemen does it, it's terror on the high seas. It's piracy. It's lawless. It's a threat to global order. But when the United States does it, it's totally valid, totally normal, totally good, actually. Y'all been watching too many of them goddamn pirate movies. Let's be clear about what happened. The U.S. Coast Guard seized an oil tanker off the coast of Venezuela. Helicopters, armed personnel, guns drawn, forced boarding. And then no euphemisms, no pretense. They kept the oil. That's not sanctions enforcement. That's not maritime security. That's not rules-based order. That's piracy. You robbed their ass on the high sea. There's no softer word for it. There's no legal gymnastics that change the definition. No moral framework where taking someone else's oil at gunpoint on the open sea magically becomes righteous because an American flag is stitched on the uniform. Should have had the skull and crossbones flying. And what makes this especially obscene is the contrast. Just months ago, Yemen enforced a blockade on Israel in response to ongoing genocide. Under international law, including the Genocide Convention, every nation has an obligation to intervene to the highest degree possible to prevent genocide. Not optional, not symbolic, an obligation. That blockade happened in or near Yemen's own territorial waters. Infinitely more defensible under international law than what the U.S. just pulled. And how did the mainstream frame Yemen? Terrorists, pirates, threats to commerce, enemies of civilization, breathless panels, endless condemnation, cause for military escalation. Now, the U.S. openly hijacks an oil tanker, openly, for oil no less, and suddenly the media finds its indoor voice. Passive verbs, sanitized headlines, no outrage, no moral panic, no talk of global norms. Because the truth we are never supposed to say out loud is this: the rules are for other people. That's the foundation of American power, not democracy, not law, not human rights exemption. The United States claims the right to define violence when others do it and rename it when America does it. We call it piracy when it threatens profits America doesn't control. America calls it security when it fills their tanks. It's not leadership. It's not order. It's organized hypocrisy with aircraft carriers. And that's why the most dangerous lie in the world is the idea that the U.S. is the guardian of global peace. BS. They are not. The United States is a rogue nation, and the largest one on earth. A state that reverses the right to break any rule it enforces. A country that lectures the world while robbing it at gunpoint. An empire that treats international law as a suggestion menu. And that makes America not Yemen, not Venezuela, not whoever today's designated villain is, the greatest threat, the global peace. Not because America is evil, and they are, but because America is powerful, unaccountable, and convinced that its violence doesn't count. And history is very clear about how that story ends. WHGE 95.3 FM, the Open Eye. All right. I'm Patrice Gibbs, right here on the Open Eye. You know, David Brooks, journalist David Brooks, he said something that cut right to the bone. Yeah. Look at the pictures of Abraham Lincoln at the end of the Civil War. Look at Franklin Roosevelt at the end of World War II. Those men aged decades and a handful of years because the weight of sending human beings, sons, daughters, husbands, wives into battle crushed them. It carved sorrow into their faces. It bent their backs and hollowed their eyes. Lincoln carried the grief of a nation on his shoulders. Roosevelt bore the responsibility of global war in his very skin. Because real leaders, moral leaders, understand that every order that sends a soldier into harm's way is a prayer, a burden, and a wound. Now look at Pete Hegseth. And let me remind you, his mama said he trash. I like Larry Daniels' favorite. She always, when she says his name, she said, Pete, his mama think he trash. His mama said he trash, except. Your mama said you trash. Look at a man entrusted with lives who treats warfare like a joystick fantasy and human casualties like background noise. A man whose detachment is so obscene that veterans' families, military ethnics, international observers, everybody is asking, does he even understand the cost of life? It's trash. Brooks said Hegseth behaves as if war is a video game. He's right. It's morally offensive. Its leadership made of plastic, lightweight, hollow, and dangerous. Because when the people who hold the power of life and death feel no weight, no hesitation, no humility, then the people who pay the price are the human beings on the ground, in the water, in the air, soldiers, civilians, and families who never signed up for someone else's delusion or heroism. Yeah, Lincoln looked broken at the end. Roosevelt looked exhausted by the toll it killed him. Hegseth looks entertained. And that's the difference between a leader who understands sacrifice and a man who mistakes killing for courage. Damn. Let's keep it moving. Because his boss is in the same boat. Coward. Straight coward. Draft dodging, bone spur foot lying son of a bitch. And this fool got up on stage, a presidential stage, and asked why the United States doesn't get immigrants from places like Sweden and Norway. Racist bastard. You know what? Hold up. Hold on. And this is for y'all. Probably no one that listens to the Open Eye. Maybe a couple of others snuck in, who claim Donald Trump is not racist. It's not a debate anymore. It's record. The Orange Disaster did not make a mistake. He did not misspeak. He articulated a worldview when he said, why is it that we only take people from ish-hole countries? Why can't we have people from Norway, Sweden, some nice people? Because here's the truth. Trump and his supporters don't want to confront. People in Scandinavia don't look at the United States like a dream. They look at it like a warning. Why would anyone leave a country with universal health care where getting sick doesn't mean losing your home? They come to a place where one ambulance ride can financially destroy you. Why would anyone leave a country with free or affordable education, where college doesn't mean decades of debt? They come where students are shackled to loans before they ever earn a dollar. Why would anyone leave a country with a year or more paid maternity and paternity leave, where raising children is supported by society? They come to a place where parents are told, figure it out or starve. F them kids. Why would anyone leave a country with strict gun laws, where school shootings are unthinkable? They come to a nation where children practice active shooter drills like that's normal. Why would they leave societies where taxes actually buy something, healthcare, safety, and dignity? They come to a country where taxes disappear into a black hole of military contracts, corporate bailouts, and billionaire tax cuts. The question isn't, why don't they come here? The question is, why the hell would they? And this is where the Orange Disaster supporters expose just how isolated they are from reality. They don't know how the world actually lives. They don't know how the United States is discussed internationally. They don't realize that America, this America, is increasingly viewed as unstable, violent, unequal, and unserious. The things they worship, unchecked capitalism, bloated military spending, billionaires hoarding obscene wealth, are seen by most of the world as failures, not achievements. Trump's base treats politics like sports. Red team versus blue team. Their guy wins, so they think they're winning. Let's look at the scorecard. The Orange Disaster gains billions. His donors gain billions. Defense contractors gain billions. And his supporters lose health care, lose reproductive rights, lose worker protections. They lose clean water, clean air, public land, safety. They lose years of their lives. Their tax dollars are funneled into endless wars they'll never fight, while bridges collapse, hospitals shut down, and communities rot. And somehow they're cheering. This is the greatest kind in modern political history, convincing struggling people to defend the very system robbing them. Convincing them that cruelty is strength, that ignorance is patriotism, that exploitation is freedom. And understand this clearly. The rest of the world is not jealous. They're not confused. They're watching. And a lot of them are laughing. Hey, God damn, look at y'all. Not because it's funny, but because it's tragic to watch people cling to a lie while it strips them of everything that actually makes life livable. Trump wants you to believe Scandinavia is the joke. The real joke is believing a billionaire who profits from your suffering actually gives a damn about you. It's the open eye. WHGE 95.3 FM. I'm Patrice Gibbs, third eye optometrist. And don't get it mixed. I like Jasmine Crockett. I do. She can get something said. But also see her clearly for who she is. Because I gotta ask you something. Did she forget who Marjorie Taylor Greene is? Or is power blinding what memory once made clear? What am I talking about? Let's stop soft shoeing around this like it's some clever chess move. Marjorie Taylor Greene is not a fremini. She is not a misunderstood colleague. She is not a wayward Republican who simply lost her way in the MAGA woods. She is a political accelerant. What's that mean? She's a woman who poured gasoline on racism, anti-Semitism, political violence, and open contempt for democracy, and then stood back and smiled while the fire spread. That is not hyperbole. This is her record. She harassed school shooting survivors. She flirted with execution fantasies about elected officials. She mainstreamed white nationalist talking points. She helped normalize January 6th before, during, and after it happened. She turned cruelty into content and lies into brand currency. So when Jasmine Crockett talks about finding common ground with Marjorie Taylor Greene, people are right to recoil, not just because they oppose compromise in principle, but because some people are not bridges, they're sinkholes. Let's get something straight. Greene did not break with Trump out of conscience. She didn't awaken to democracy. She didn't suddenly discover decency. She was excommunicated by the cult she helped radicalize. She turned on Trump only after MAGA turned on her, after the death threats, after she lost protection, and she became politically disposable. That's not growth, that's fallout. And here's the danger nobody wants to say plainly. Every time Democrats legitimize figures like Greene, they launder extremism. Not intentionally, not maliciously, but effectively. You don't need to endorse someone to rehabilitate them. You just need to treat them like a reasonable actor who deserves redemption without accountability. That's how the system resists villains, or resets villains into complicated figures. That's how history gets rewritten in real time. And let's not dodge the obvious question. Does Jasmine Crockett want to be a senator that bad? Because when ambition starts whispering, this could play well statewide. Memory is often the first casualty. Memory of who paid the price for Greene's rhetoric. Memory of communities terrorized by violence. Memory of how quickly working together becomes, see, she wasn't that bad. Security bill or not, there's no neutral collaboration with a political arsonist. Security for who? For members of Congress? No, security for a system that keeps proving it will protect itself before it protects the people. And let's be real. Black politicians are always told to be the adults in the room, to be the healers, to be the bridge, to extend grace where none was offered. But grace without justice is not strength, it's surrender dressed up as pragmatism. You do not build moral credibility by partnering with someone who spent years actively dismantling it. You do not model unity with someone who thrived on division. You do not move the country forward by pretending that racism, fascism, and conspiracy are just policy disagreements. And history is brutal on that point. Those who try to work with extremists are never remembered as pragmatists. They're remembered as people who mistook access for influence and proximity for power. Marjorie Taylor Greene does not need common ground. She needs reckoning. She needs consequences. She needs to sit with the wreckage she helped create. And Democrats need to stop confusing optics with progress. See, we get a kick out of Jasmine Crockett, out of the optics. You don't bury the hatchet with someone who never put it down. You don't normalize poison because it's momentarily diluted. And you don't heal a nation by pretending its wounds weren't intentional. This is not about civility, it's about lines. If those lines blur in the name of ambition, then the question won't be, did Jasmine Crockett forget who Marjorie Taylor Greene is? The question will be, who did she decide we were supposed to forget? The question will be, who are you, Marjorie Taylor? Who are you, Jasmine? That will be the question. WHGE 95.3 FM. It's Open Eye. All right. Here's a phrase that MAGA love. Lock her ass up. Yeah. Right? They been lock her ass up. I ain't talking about Hillary. Let's be clear about what we just witnessed, because history will try to soften this moment later on. Kristi Noem didn't walk into that House Homeland Security Committee hearing as a public servant. She walked in as a defendant who didn't just know which charge would land first. From the opening gravel, the lie collapsed. Lock her ass up. She sat there under oath and said repeatedly that no U.S. citizen or military veterans had been deported under her watch. Said it with confidence. Said it like she believed repetition was substitute for truth. Then Congressman Seth Magaziner dropped reality on the table. A Purple Heart combat veteran, deported, exiled to a country he hasn't lived in since he was 7 years old. And when confronted with that fact, when asked to simply acknowledge that sacrifice, Noem didn't apologize. She didn't correct the record. She didn't take responsibility. She added a qualifier. She thanked veterans who follow our laws. That wasn't a clarification. That was character assassination. Lock her ass up. That was the Secretary of Homeland Security implying that a decorated American soldier somehow deserved to be disappeared by the very government he bled for. And that's when the hearing stopped being political and started being criminal. Lock her ass up. Because Representative Delia Ramirez didn't argue semantics. She brought receipts, a ProPublica investigation. 170 American citizens violently detained by ICE. 75,000 people with no criminal history swept up in raids. And then she said what everyone else was thinking. You lied to Congress. Your options are limited. Resign, get fired, or be impeached. That wasn't rhetoric. That was a countdown. Then came the woman that told the whole story. Yeah. Kristi Noem abruptly fled the hearing, claiming she had to chair a FEMA council meeting. Only problem, the meeting was canceled. It was already canceled. She didn't rush to another obligation. She lingered out in the hallway. Because when lies catch up to you, there's nowhere to run, only places to stall. Republicans blocked the subpoena to force her back to testify, but blocking accountability doesn't erase perjury. It just delays it. Lock her ass up. As Fox News' Jessica Tarlov, Fox News put it, either she's lying under oath or she has no idea what's happening in her own department. Not sure which is worse. And while all this was unfolding in public, the ground started cracking beneath her in private. The orange disaster, who only values loyalty until it becomes inconvenient, has reportedly started asking questions about Noem's $220 million immigration and ad campaign, starring Kristi Noem. Not border security, not public safety, not policy, her face, her brand, her ambition. And when the tangerine tyrant starts asking how much something costs, it's already over. Add in Corey Lewandowski hovering like political exhaustions, and then conflict of interest contracts benefiting insiders. Add in Department of Homeland Security, worst of the worst, list padded with traffic offenses. What you're watching isn't scandal, it's exposure. Kristi Noem didn't stumble into this moment. She engineered it by weaponizing fear, dehumanizing immigrants, and betting that power would protect her from truth. But truth showed up anyway. Lock her ass up. And here's the part they don't want you to say out loud. This isn't about Kristi Noem alone. And this is what happens when cruelty replaces governance, when propaganda replaces policy, when enforcement becomes spectacle and lies become routine. Every regime that collapses starts with officials who think the rules don't apply to them until they do. She knows she's going to prison. It isn't just a viral line. It's the sound of accountability knocking. Oh, yeah. Knocking on the door that's been closed for far too long. Lock her ass up. This is the Open Eye. WHGE 95.3 FM. I'm Patrice Gibbs. All right. I don't know if many of you saw the video. I'm gonna tell you about this because this exchange. It wasn't just embarrassing for the U.S. It's indicting. A member of Congress asked a question so basic it shouldn't require clearance, spin, or legal choreography. If Antifa is the #1 domestic terrorist threat in the United States, then where they at? Not who snitched, not operational details, not anything classified, just location and scale. That's all. And what did the FBI give the American people? Nothing. Not an address, not a city, not a region, not a number. Just bureaucratic fog and buzzwords designed to sound serious while saying absolutely nothing. Building out the infrastructure. It's very fluid. Ongoing investigations. Comparable to Al-Qaeda, and ISIS. That isn't intelligence, that's a con. Because Al-Qaeda has camps. ISIS has territory. They had leaders, funding streams, recruitment pipelines, chains of command, body counts, arrest records, and identifiable members. They could be mapped, tracked, counted, and dismantled. Antifa, no headquarters, no membership roles, no command structure, no financing network, no numbers. Because Antifa is not an organization. It's a word, a smear, a political scarecrow waved in front of the public to justify surveillance, crowd control, informants, and repression, especially against protest movements that make people in power uncomfortable. Watch how the comparison is used. By invoking ISIS and Al-Qaeda, Glashing isn't confronting Congress, isn't informing Congress. He's laundering fear. He's borrowing the emotional weight of real terror networks to prop up a claim he cannot substantiate. And Benny Thompson, a representative from Mississippi, he does what a real oversight chair is supposed to do. He refuses to let the witness hide behind jargon. He asks again and again and again. Each time the answers got weaker, more evasive, more exposed. By the end, the truth is unavoidable. The FBI walked into a congressional hearing, made a massive accusation, and has zero evidence to put on the table. You wouldn't come to this committee and say something you can't prove, would you? But you did. That's not a rhetorical jab. That's a record for history. Because this is how democratic societies rot from the inside. When federal agencies replace evidence with narratives. When fear is treated as proof. When dissent is recast as terrorism without facts. If the government can label a vibe a terrorist organization, it can label you one tomorrow. No addresses, no numbers, no proof, just power, paranoia, and a badge demanding to be believed. This is the open eye. All right. And as we close the day, I hope you learned something, because I learned something before I got here. That's the whole point of this space. This isn't about pretending to have all the answers. It's about staying curious, staying honest and being willing to grow in public. Every day the world teaches us something new. And we're brave enough to look at it without filters and without fear. Truth don't whisper. It survives being ignored, distorted, and buried, and attacked. And it shows up tomorrow demanding accountability. We're told to be comfortable, to be quiet, to accept what is. But history has never moved forward because people stayed comfortable. It moves when ordinary people decide their conscience matters more than their convenience. So question what you're told. Interrogate power. Protect your humanity. And never let anyone convince you that demanding justice is extreme while tolerating injustice is normal. This is the open eye, where we don't just look at the world as it is, but challenge it to become what it should be. Hey, Tracy, I see you, sister. Destiny determines who enters your life, but you decide who stays. Therefore, value those who value you, and don't treat those as a priority who treat you as an option. This has been Open Eye on WHGE 95.3 FM. I'm Patrice Gibbs. Thanks for joining us. All right. Thanks for joining us. Hey, Tracy, catch me on the rebroadcast. That's word. Good to see you there, though, sister. And like I always tell you, global African supremacy is coming. Africa is rising. Pay attention. Peace.